"Mommy says you're lonely too," said the black girl. The white seal didn't know it had changed his life. "My mommy is sick, but if you come to my party, I know she'll smile. Mommy says you're lonely too." The little girl's voice was a soft melody against the harsh city sounds. A lonely wind snaked through the skeletal branches of the trees, pushing a scattering of dried leaves across the pavement of a small, neglected park. Liam Prescott sat on a worn bench, his expensive suit immaculate, his leather shoes polished to a mirror shine, yet he looked utterly broken. His shoulders were bowed, and he gripped a tepid paper cup of coffee as if it were his only tether to the world. It had been exactly 6 years. He had just visited the cemetery, with a pristine marble headstone bearing his daughter's name stood in stark contrast to its surroundings. He'd left her favorite white roses, a preference he'd had to guess. There was no one else there, just him and the profound silence that had become his constant companion. He was staring into a haze of regret and what might have beens when a shuffling sound broke his trance. He looked over to see a small figure standing nearby. She was a little black girl, maybe 3 years old, with her hair in a dozen tiny, perfect braids, each adorned with a colorful bead. Dressed in a faded blue dress, she clutched a small cloth pouch to her chest. Her shoes didn't match, one red and one pink, and a smudge of chocolate decorated one cheek, but her eyes were luminous, wide, and focused directly on him. "Are you sad too, mister?" she inquired, her tone light and matter-of-fact. Liam was startled. She pointed a small finger at him. "Because you're sitting all by yourself, just like me." The simple observation struck him with surprising force. "And why are you all alone, little one?" he asked gently. Her expression grew solemn. "It's my birthday today. Mommy's sick, but she said she'd still smile if you came to my party." Liam was speechless. He had navigated hostile takeovers and billion-dollar negotiations, but he was completely disarmed by this tiny girl. He scanned the park. A few other children were playing far off, oblivious. Behind them stood a row of tired-looking brick apartment buildings. I really shouldn't impose," he began, trying to stand. But her little hand shot out and grabbed the sleeve of his coat with unexpected strength. Her voice was just a whisper now. "Please, I saved candies from school for it." Liam looked down into her serious, knowing eyes, an expression far too old for such a small child, and felt a wall inside him crack. He hadn't marked a birthday in years. The last one he'd attended had been in a hospital room, where his own daughter was too weak to even blow out the candles. "Asterisk, it's okay, Daddy. We can pretend." Asterisk, she had whispered. This little girl was pretending, too. He gave a slow nod. "All right, then. Lead the way, birthday girl." Her face lit up with the brilliance of a sunrise. She took his hand without a second of hesitation, and he let his fingers be enveloped by hers. Her hand was cool, but her grip was firm. As they walked, she chattered about a picture she'd drawn, how her mommy was resting, and how it was still a party even if the other kids went home, because she had her candies. And now she had a guest. He found himself listening, more engaged with the present moment than he had been in years. The buildings grew larger as they approached. A curtain danced in a second-story window. A dog barked in the distance. He realized that for the first time in a very long time, he wasn't thinking about business or loss or himself. He was simply following a child who had recognized his sorrow without a single word being spoken. And for some reason he couldn't explain, it was making him feel human again. The building's hallway carried the faint scent of old paint and dampness. Liam followed the little girl up 2 flights of groaning stairs, her small hand still firmly in his. She skipped along, humming to herself, until they reached a door with peeling blue paint. The number 2C was barely clinging to the wood. She knocked twice, then pushed the door open. "Mommy, I brought someone." Liam paused on the threshold. The room was dimly lit by a single, flickering bulb over a small kitchen sink. The walls were discolored with time, and one corner was patched with a piece of cardboard. A couch by the window sagged deeply in the middle. A woman lay on it, her form frail under a thin blanket. It was Tasha Monroe, a soft-spoken black woman with exhaustion etched into her beautiful features. At her daughter's voice, she stirred, coughing lightly as she turned. When her eyes fell on Liam, tall, well-dressed, a stranger in her home, her body went rigid. Her gaze darted between the man and her child, a storm of confusion and fear in her eyes. She tried to sit up, her elbows shaking with the effort, but her arm gave way and she nearly fell back before catching herself with a wince. Liam instinctively took a step forward, his hands raised placatingly. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to startle you." She invited me to a party. Tasha blinked, trying to make sense of the situation. Her voice, when she spoke, was raspy but steady. "You came with her?" He nodded. "She found me in the park. She said it was her birthday." A moment of silence passed. Tasha looked from her daughter, who was now busy setting out napkins and two mismatched teacups on a wobbly folding table, back to Liam. The fear in her eyes hadn't vanished, but something in his gentle demeanor seemed to soothe it. A tired, hesitant smile touched her lips. "Well, in that case, welcome." Liam entered slowly, his gaze taking in the small space. It was worn down, but it was also impeccably clean. A small shelf held a few children's books and a well-loved teddy bear with a missing ear. Crayon drawings were taped with pride to the refrigerator and walls. One depicted a smiling stick-figure family under a joyful, bright yellow sun. There was no cake and no balloons, just a profound sense of hope holding on by a thread. The little girl was focused on her preparations. "I'll get the candies." "Wait right here, mister." Tasha watched her daughter for a moment, then glanced down at her own lap. A thin tube ran from under her nose to a portable oxygen tank standing beside the couch. "I wasn't expecting any guests," she said quietly, an apology in her tone. Liam offered a small, kind smile. "To be honest, I didn't expect to be at a party today either. But your daughter was very persuasive. I've been to countless events that called themselves parties, but none of them felt this sincere." Tasha let out a breath, and some of the tension eased from her shoulders. "She has a way of doing that," she murmured, gesturing toward her child, who was now climbing on a chair to reach a high shelf. "She makes you feel like you're the most important person in the world." Liam watched the girl with quiet admiration. "She's remarkable." After a pause, Tasha looked at him again. "She saved those candies from school all week. She said she didn't want to eat them alone on her birthday." Liam looked at the floor, suddenly finding it hard to speak. "She told me her mom had promised her a cake," he said softly. Tasha's smile faltered, her eyes becoming glassy, but she fought to keep her composure. "I did. I was going to," she whispered. Before this last downturn, Liam turned to her. "You don't owe me any explanation." Tasha shook her head. "I owe her. She's 3. She doesn't understand why Mommy can't get out of bed for days, or why her daddy never came home after the scaffolding accident. She just wants candles and for someone to sing happy birthday." Liam looked at the child, who was now carefully unwrapping 3 tiny, colorful candies and arranging them on a plastic plate. "She got 2 out of 3, he said quietly. "Candles and someone to sing." Tears welled in Tasha's eyes. She nodded, swallowing hard. Then, mustering her strength, she sat up a little straighter and said with profound grace, "Well then, mister, let's not keep the birthday girl waiting." The little girl returned, holding her cloth bag as if it contained royal jewels. With deliberate steps and a face full of ceremony, she knelt by the small table. "I brought the good ones," she announced brightly. Her tiny, slightly sticky fingers unwrapped 3 hard candies, 1 red, 1 green, 1 blue, and placed them on a faded paper plate. The cartoon characters on the plate were worn, but the reverence in her actions made the scene feel sacred. Liam slowly lowered his large frame to the floor, folding his expensive coat and setting it beside him. Sitting cross-legged, he picked up the green candy, holding it as if it were a rare gem. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with sincerity. She beamed with pride. "That one's mint. Mommy says it's good for your breath." He let out a soft chuckle, surprised by the sound of his own genuine laughter, a sound he hadn't heard in years. From the couch, Tasha watched them, her body finally relaxing into the cushions, a hand resting over her chest. Her daughter's smile was back, full and bright, and the deep lines of fatigue around Tasha's eyes seemed to soften. "Okay," the little girl announced, taking a deep breath. "I'm going to sing now." Liam sat up straighter. "We're ready." She closed her eyes, her hands folded in her lap. Her voice, light and a little shaky, filled the quiet room. "Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to me." But on the final line, her voice trailed off. Her eyes fell to the plate. There was no cake, no candle, just candy and silence. Yet she still smiled, lifting her chin. "Now I'll blow out the air." She leaned forward and puffed gently over the plate. There was no flame, no wisp of smoke, only the soft, determined sound of her breath. Tasha's lips trembled. She blinked away a tear that escaped anyway. The simple, pure moment broke through the years of guarded sorrow Liam had built around his heart. Then the little girl turned to him and asked in a whisper, "Mister, do wishes still come true if there aren't any candles?" He didn't answer immediately. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a sleek, silver lighter, its surface smooth and cool. He looked around, spotted a toothpick in a cup by the sink, and snapped it in half. He flicked the lighter, and a steady flame appeared. He lit the tip of the toothpick and held it before her. "Only," he said softly, "if someone else lights one for you." The girl's eyes grew wide. "It's a real flame." He smiled. "Make your wish, princess." She leaned in, her cheeks puffed, and with a gentle breath, the tiny flame vanished. The room was dim again, but the glow of the moment remained. Silently, Liam reached into his pocket again. He took out a mechanical pencil, carefully disassembled it, and used the empty plastic casing to create a tiny, makeshift candle. He stood it upright in the middle of the plate. Without a word, he handed the lighter to Tasha. She hesitated, her eyes moving from Liam to her daughter. Her hand trembled as she flicked the lighter, the small flame springing to life. She lit the improvised candle. The girl clapped her hands in pure delight. "It's a birthday now. A real one." Liam grinned. "Happy birthday." Tasha let out a fragile, airy laugh that turned into a cough, but she didn't hide her face. She let herself laugh right through it, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. "I can't believe this," she whispered. Liam looked at her. "Believe it. It's real." Tasha covered her mouth, her eyes shining. "I haven't seen her this happy since." Before, Liam held her gaze, his own eyes steady and kind. "Sometimes," he said, "all it takes is a little spark." Tasha looked at her daughter, who was now pretending to pour invisible tea and serve candy, as if it were a grand dessert. "No cake," she whispered, "but she has everything she needed." Liam nodded. "And maybe," he added quietly, "everything we needed, too." The next morning, Liam sat in the glass-walled boardroom of Prescott Holdings, the city skyline stretching out behind him like a conquest he no longer cared for. Executives in sharp suits spoke of projections, acquisitions, and a planned demolition to make way for a new luxury high-rise. He heard almost none of it. His thoughts were miles away, in a dim apartment where a little girl had sung to herself over 3 pieces of candy, and a woman with tired eyes had smiled through her pain. When the meeting shifted to the East Side clearance proposal, he raised his hand. "I want this paused," he said. The room fell silent. "We haven't done a full impact study," he stated, his voice firm. "We will be displacing families. People. I want a revised plan before we move forward." An executive started to object, but Mr. Prescott, Liam, cut him off. "I said pause it." He left the room before the murmurs could begin. That afternoon, he returned to apartment 2C. The hallway was just as tired, but he carried a small box containing a single cupcake with pink frosting, 3 tiny birthday candles, and a beautifully illustrated children's book wrapped in brown paper. When the door opened, Tasha was standing there, leaning against the frame for support. She'd managed to change into a clean shirt, and her hair was brushed. Her eyes widened in surprise. "You actually came back." Liam lifted the box and smiled. "I believe we were in the middle of a party. I don't like to leave early." She stepped aside, and he entered. The little girl's face lit up at the sight of the cupcake. "Is that for me?" "It is," Liam said. "This time, you get to make a wish with real candles." They gathered at the small table again. Tasha sat with a blanket over her lap, Liam sat opposite, and the little girl bounced with excitement. "Can I light them?" she asked. Liam handed her the lighter. Tasha gently reached over, her hand guiding her daughter's. Together, they lit the 3 tiny flames dancing atop the small cupcake. To the little girl, it was a towering masterpiece. She closed her eyes, whispered a wish that only the walls would hear, and blew them out with a single, proud puff. They all clapped, and she beamed. Afterward, Liam unwrapped the book. "This," he said, "was my daughter's favorite. I think you might like it." He began to read, using silly, theatrical voices. The little girl laughed until she hiccuped, and even Tasha, watching from the side, let out a genuine laugh that was only partly a cough. "You missed your calling," she said when she caught her breath. "Too many board meetings," Liam replied with a shrug. Time slipped by as they turned the pages and shared the cupcake. As the sun dipped lower, casting a warm, golden light through the window, Liam stood to leave. His eye caught a peeling corner of paint near the doorframe, and next to it, a coat hook hanging loosely from the wall. Without a second thought, he unfastened the expensive leather strap of his watch, broke it in two, and used a piece to wedge the screws tight, securing the hook firmly to the wall. Tasha watched him, her eyes following his every quiet, deliberate movement. As he straightened up, he pulled a folded note from his jacket and placed it on the table. "Next time," he said, "I'll bring the tea." Then he was gone. After the door clicked shut, Tasha reached for the note. It was folded neatly. When she opened it, her breath hitched. On the back of a deposit slip, drawn in crayon by a child's hand, were 3 stick figures holding hands under a sun. One was a tall man in a suit, one was a woman with braided hair, and one was a little girl with a crown. Below it, in crooked letters, it read, "Mommy plus me plus Mr. Nice equals happy." Tasha pressed the drawing to her chest, and for the first time in a very long time, she allowed herself to hope. The apartment was still, save for the soft hum of the oxygen machine and the rhythmic breathing of her child curled up beside her. Tasha sat on the edge of the bed, her gaze lost in the shadows the nightlight cast on the peeling wallpaper. Her fingers smoothed the blanket over her daughter, but her mind was turbulent. She reached for a small, empty jam jar on the nightstand, where the faint mark of wax remained from Liam's makeshift candle. That light had brought her daughter such joy, but now Tasha saw it as a potential warning flare. She pulled a worn notebook from her drawer, its pages filled with lesson plans from a teaching career cut short. Tonight, she wrote something else. Asterisk, he's kind. Too kind. But when this ends, and it always does, what happens to people like us? What happens when people like him move on? Asterisk, she couldn't write anymore. The next afternoon, Liam returned with a coloring book and a brand new box of crayons. "I brought something for the artist," he said with a smile as the door opened. The little girl shrieked with delight and ran to grab them. "Thank you, Mr. Liam." But Tasha remained by the counter, her smile polite but strained. "That's very generous of you, but you really don't have to keep doing this," she said softly, her eyes avoiding his. "I want to," he said simply. She nodded once. "Thank you," she repeated, then turned away, creating a subtle but clear distance. Liam lingered, seeing the tension in her shoulders, before quietly excusing himself. That night, he stood in a grand ballroom, a drink in his hand and a hollow smile on his face. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead, and laughter echoed off marble walls. He was surrounded by wealth and power, but he couldn't recall the name of the man speaking to him. His phone buzzed. He pulled it out, and the screen lit up with a photo of the drawing. "Mommy plus me plus Mr. Nice equals happy." His hand tightened around his glass. He set it down, untouched, and left without a word to anyone. The next day, he walked the now familiar path to the east side. As he passed through the iron gate, a voice stopped him. An older man with gray stubble and a worn cap stood on the steps, his arms crossed. "You're from the company, aren't you?" he asked, his eyes sharp. Liam nodded. "Prescott Holdings." The man's expression hardened. "People like you buy up places like this and kick us out. You tear it all down and act like we were never even here." Liam looked at the man, seeing not just anger, but a fierce defense of the only home he had. "You're right," Liam said quietly. That happens far too often. The man seemed taken aback by the admission. Liam continued, his voice steady. But maybe I'm here to remember. A long silence stretched between them. Then the man stepped aside. From her second-floor window, Tasha had seen the whole exchange. She had been folding the small pile of their clean laundry when she saw Liam arrive. She had braced herself, expecting him to leave after the confrontation. But he had stayed. He had listened. He had admitted to a truth no man in his position ever would. When Liam knocked, Tasha opened the door immediately. The guarded look was gone, replaced by a softness he hadn't seen before. "Come in," she said, her voice warm. "She's been asking for you all morning." Liam smiled as he stepped inside. The little girl ran to him, crayons in hand, already chattering about her latest masterpiece. Tasha leaned against the doorframe, just watching them. She didn't know what this was, or how long it could possibly last. But for the first time, she let herself believe that it just might be real. The power went out just after sunset, plunging the entire east side into darkness. In apartment 2C, Tasha lit a single candle. Her daughter was curled on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. Then a knock. Tasha opened the door to find Liam standing there, a flashlight in one hand and a tote bag over his shoulder. "You really came," she said, her voice a mix of awe and relief. "Even in the dark?" Liam smiled. That's when tea tastes the best from his bag. He produced shortbread cookies, a thermos of hot water, and a new set of pink plastic teacups. Soon, they were all sitting cross-legged on the floor, the flashlight aimed at the ceiling, casting a soft, theatrical glow around them. "Tonight," Tasha announced grandly to her daughter, "we have a special guest at the royal tea party. Mr. Liam is the knight." "What kind of knight?" he asked, playing along. "The kind who brings cookies," the little girl declared. Tasha laughed. "Then he's the rarest kind indeed." They told a story together, passing the narrative back and forth. Tasha began with a tale of a lonely princess in a tower of blankets. Liam added a knight who carried a beam of light instead of a sword, who found her not by chance, but by keeping a promise. The little girl giggled, adding silly details about talking animals and rivers of juice. Time melted away. Tasha's laughter was easier now, less of a struggle against her pain. As her daughter's energy finally waned and she drifted asleep with her head in Tasha's lap, the flashlight began to dim. In the fading light, Tasha leaned against the wall. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice low, "of getting used to this. To you." And then, having all taken away, Liam was quiet for a moment, looking at the immense weight she carried. "So, am I," he said finally. "But maybe this is the first thing in a long time that I don't want to lose." Later, as Tasha gently lifted her sleeping daughter to carry her to bed, a messy crayon drawing fluttered from the girl's hand. Tasha picked it up. The image was of her, lying in bed, surrounded by darkness. In the corner, a small candle burned, and next to it stood a stick figure holding a bright light, a drawing of Liam with extra-large hands. "She must have drawn this earlier," Tasha whispered. "She's stronger than she looks," Liam said, standing beside her. Tasha looked up at him. "Just like you." She didn't reply with words. Instead, she reached out, and for the first time, her fingers closed around his. It wasn't a gesture of romance, not yet. It was something more profound, a quiet surrender of fear. Liam didn't speak. He just held her hand as the flashlight faded to a soft glow and the candle flame danced on the wall. In the dark, powerless apartment, with no promises for tomorrow, they simply sat together, sharing the fragile hope that maybe not everything good had to end. A scream cut through the morning stillness. Liam was already awake when the call came. "She's not waking up," a paramedic said calmly on the other end. Your number was the only one the little girl knew by heart. Liam was grabbing his keys before the man finished his sentence. By the time he arrived at the hospital, the emergency room was a cacophony of beeps and hushed, urgent voices under cold fluorescent lights. Tasha was in the ICU, unconscious, a web of tubes and wires connecting her to machines that hissed and pulsed with a terrifying rhythm. Her skin was ashen, her breathing terrifyingly shallow. Liam entered the room and went straight to her side. He sat on the edge of the bed, his jaw tight against the overwhelming powerlessness of the situation. He brushed a stray strand of hair from her forehead, then took off his jacket and carefully draped it over her legs. Soft footsteps approached. The little girl, swallowed by a too-big sweater, stood in the doorway clutching a stuffed bear. Liam turned and offered a weak smile, but she didn't return it. She walked slowly to the foot of the bed, knelt down, unzipped her own little pink coat, and carefully folded it over her bear. Without looking up, she whispered, "He's cold, too." In that moment, Liam felt a sharp pang in his chest. No boardroom victory or penthouse view could ever hold the weight of this one small, profound act of love. A child sharing what little warmth she had, a man clinging to hope, and a woman fighting for every breath. Later that day, a doctor pulled Liam aside. The news was grim. "We've done everything we can. Her immune system is failing. She needs a bone marrow match, urgently." The wait list could be months, maybe longer. Liam sat in stoic silence for a moment, then said 2 words. "Test me." The nurse blinked. "Mr. Prescott, it's test me." The results came back in 48 hours. He was a match. He told no one. He simply signed the consent forms, cleared his entire schedule, and prepared for the procedure without any announcement. He just showed up. The donation left him sore and aching in a way he hadn't anticipated, but when he saw Tasha a day later, awake and sitting up in her hospital bed, it was all worth it. She looked up as he entered her room. Her daughter was asleep in a chair next to her, arms wrapped around the same bear. "Ew," Tasha said, her voice raspy but sharp. Liam offered a faint smile. "Me, I heard," she said, her eyes flashing. "You did it, didn't you?" He didn't deny it. He pulled a chair to her bedside. "You can't just fix everything," she said, her voice laced more with anger than gratitude. "You can't just throw yourself into my life and expect—" "I'm not fixing," Liam interrupted gently. "I'm choosing." She stared at him, her eyes tired and clouded with medication, but still fierce. He leaned closer, his voice low and steady. "You gave me a reason to feel again, to remember what it's like to care about something that isn't tied to money or legacy. I didn't do this to rescue you, Tasha. I did this because I don't want to imagine a world without you in it." The only sound in the room was the steady beep of the heart monitor. Slowly, Tasha's eyes filled with tears, not of fear or pain, but of something far deeper. She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, her hand reached out across the blanket, weak but determined. Liam met her halfway, his hand gently enveloping hers. They didn't need to say anything else. They just sat there, hand in hand, as the sterile machines hummed around them. And in that small, cold room, something quiet and beautiful began to bloom. Not a fairy tale rescue, but something real. A choice. A life. The backyard was small, but it felt like paradise. Colorful streamers fluttered from a weathered fence, and paper lanterns cast a soft, golden glow as dusk settled. Children's laughter filled the air as they ran barefoot through the grass. At the center of it all was a table laden with cupcakes, juice boxes, and a round cake with white frosting and 4 pink candles. Tasha stood beside it, her smile radiant. Her hair had grown back in soft waves that brushed her shoulders. She wore a simple blue dress that made the light in her eyes shine even brighter. Her movements were still slow, but they were strong, and they were hers. Liam stood at her side, holding the cake steady as their little girl, now 4 years old, twirled before them in a dress of ruffles and sparkle, a crooked, glittering plastic crown on her head. "Princess," Liam called out, "your royal cake is ready." She skipped over, her hands clasped in excitement. Liam knelt down, balancing the cake as Tasha lit the candles. The small crowd of friends and neighbors quieted. In that moment, only 3 people existed. The little girl leaned forward, the candlelight dancing in her wide eyes. Before she took a breath, she turned to Liam and whispered, "You were my first candle." He paused, then a deep, genuine smile spread across his face. He leaned in and whispered back, "And you were my first light." She blew out the candles in one big puff, and the yard erupted in cheers. Liam stood, setting the cake down, but his gaze remained on her and her mother. Tasha reached for his hand, and he took it, their fingers lacing together naturally. She looked at him not as a savior, but as the man who had chosen them, day after day. A quiet love built not on grand gestures, but on shared moments of fear and hope. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Liam lifted the birthday girl into his arms. "Did you make a wish?" he asked. She nodded solemnly. "What was it?" She leaned close, her lips brushing his ear. "I wish that we could stay like this forever." He pulled her into a tight hug and kissed her forehead. "We already are," he said softly. Tasha joined them, wrapping her arms around them both. And there, under the fading light and the gentle glow of the lanterns, they stood, a woman who had fought for her life, a man who had learned how to live again, and the little girl who had shown them both the way. They closed their eyes, breathing in the scent of candle smoke, the sound of laughter, and the simple, undeniable truth that sometimes the smallest birthday party can be the beginning of everything.